some
That's
health
always
issues,
sad.
but I didn't think it was this severe.
No. No,
As soon as I found out, I went around telling
Hi
everyone
there.
at work.
My name is Tara Crugnale, and I'm the community producer of this show, The Opinionators. We have just heard some breaking news about Jim Flaherty, and I will send you to our moderator, Larry Di Ianni.
Well, thank you very much, Tara. And what happened now?
Hey, you got a polka dot tie on.
I do.
The polka dot tie.
What happened? Did we screw up again?
It was Ron's fault.
No, something happened inside there.
Always.
I know.
do.
I could hear. I could
Always
hear
blame-
my.
always
the
blame the
introduction
little
to the
guys.
show? Did they do?
Yeah, they had done it,
Okay.
yeah. No, like we just didn't expect it.
Very sad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi there, my name is Tara Crugnale, and I am the community producer of this show, The Opinionators. We're just talking about some breaking news, the death of Jim Flaherty. Before we go any further, I want to send you to our moderator, Larry Di Ianni.
Well, thank you very much, Tara, and welcome to the Opinionators for April the 10th. I am Larry Di Ianni, and of course, the Opinionators is a program that brings all the political views to your doorstep and to your TV set as well. And our panel was talking about the untimely death just this afternoon of former Finance Minister Jim Flaherty. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about the fact that Premier Wynne seems to have muzzled Tim, but at what price? Tim Hudak, of course. The PQ election means something not only for Quebec, but I think for Canada. We'll offer some opinions on that. And we're going to talk about the CBC as well as Justin Trudeau, who says that if he becomes the premier, the prime minister that is, he's going to repeal the Fair Elections Act, which everybody says is everything but a Fair Elections Act. So before we go there, though, let's meet our panel. And you've met our community producer, Tara Crugnale of the Conservative Party. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Larry.
And across from her, of course, is Alex Johnstone of the NDP persuasion. Alex, nice to see you here.
Hello there, Larry.
And Ron Corsini of the Liberal Party, or at least expressing the views of the Liberal Party. Welcome to the program, Ron.
Great to be here, Larry.
And Tara, let's go with you because I know that you're saddened by this. I think all of us are saddened by this. The untimely death just this afternoon of apparently a massive heart attack of former Finance Minister Jim Flaherty, the only Finance Minister, other than the recent appointment of Joe Oliver, that this country is known under your government's tutelage.
Yeah.
What does that say to you? It was really sad.
It was very unexpected. I think that when Jim Flaherty stepped down just last month as finance minister, we all knew maybe something was up. He said he wanted to spend more time with his family. It's just very sad all around. I mean, I first met Jim Flaherty in 1995 during the Common Sense Revolution. So it was great to see him progress through Ontario politics and then through federal politics. But he will be missed by our party and hopefully by Canadians.
Well, I think so. And in fact, Alex, I was saying off camera how impressed I was with Thomas Mulcair's really honest and heartfelt, he broke down, expression of grief over Mr. Flaherty's passing. What does that say to you about politics in our country?
Well, Thomas and his wife did send their heartfelt condolences. I think oftentimes people think that if you're in different parties, that you're always in a battle on screen and off screen. But the reality is that a lot of us get along. We
we all get
we
along.
do. The three of us, we were talking about how
We love each other.
Well, we go out afterwards for coffee, for drinks, and just talk about the common experiences that we have. Life in politics can be very difficult, and no matter what side of the fence you're on.
Absolutely.
And of course, Minister Flaherty, one can say, really gave his life for this country. He was ill, struggling with it, in a difficult, maybe the most difficult portfolio other than the Prime Minister's, and he fought till the end, and the end came too quickly. I haven't heard Mr. Trudeau's tribute. I'm sure it'll be coming, but I did hear Bob Rae, former leader, express some very similar emotions about the untimely death. What does it say to you?
Well, he had deep respect in the House. You have your differences. You mentioned it earlier on, your different party stripes. But when it comes down to it, you have to thank people that go into politics. I know what it's like. I had a little taste of it myself, and so have you, Larry, that you make so many sacrifices. Your family makes so many sacrifices for you. And when something like this happens, it even saddens me. I've never met the man, but I know the work that he's put into his life in politics. It's not an easy road to take.
Absolutely. And we, of course, express our condolences to the family as well.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, listen, we have a show to do, so let's get on with it. And Alex, this one's for you, and it has to do with the drama that's occurring at Queen's Park, the suit and countersuit, or at least the suit by the Premier of Tim Hudak for alleging that she personally ordered the erasing of those tapes. And, of course, Mr. Hudak is saying he's not going to be muzzled, although I note that he hasn't repeated the allegations outside of the House. What does that say to you about the state of politics provincially?
Well, I think that he does need to produce evidence, but at the same time, with Kathleen Wynne coming out with the legalities, it makes her look bad. Strategically, I think that it makes her appear that she has something to hide, whether that's the case or not, and whether she had been involved after she had been nominated leader. But I think that both parties need to come out with more facts. I think Kathleen needs to be revealing more of the documents here, and I think that if Hudak has something to say, if he has something that he's sitting on, he needs to come forward with that.
Well, for sure, Tara, the scandal has taken its toll. There's a breaking news poll just today, released today by Forum, indicating that the Conservatives are finally ahead of Kathleen Wynne, attributable to this particular scandal. Is this why Hudak was doing this, just to make sure that the polls would reflect it?
Well, Larry, I think all of you know how I feel about polls. They're very fickle and they change day to day, and you can make them say whatever you want. So even when a poll is in my favor, I'm not going to vouch for it. I think that the more that comes out, the more that Tim Hudak fights for more integrity in the office of the Premier, and doesn't hold back. I mean, even Lisa MacLeod, another MPP, our own party were served with these types of papers. I don't know where this will go from here, but I agree with you, Alex. It doesn't look good on the Premier. There's mudslinging all the time. People are always saying things about other people. If you start to bring libel suits into it, it makes it seem like you're trying to hide something. Tim Hudak did not say specifically that Kathleen Wynne did X, Y, Z. He is just questioning it. He says that it could have happened under her watch, and he wants to know exactly what happened so that, she is not under this cloud of suspicion.
Well, it sounds like that's a bit of a pullback right there, right? Because he, I think, said categorically
that
this
did.
Likely happened.
He said, but even likely does not mean that this happened.
Well,
he is choosing his words carefully.
That's kind of nitpicking, though.
But you're saying, I can't believe you're both saying that she's trying to hide something. She's trying to bring this all out into the open.
Now you're pulling a Hudak by putting words into my mouth. What I said is that strategically it looks bad.
Yeah.
And
no
I
question.
think it looks bad.
The optics are bad. Let's give Ron a chance.
The optics may look bad, but she wants him to prove those allegations, and she has every right to litigate those allegations. I mean, you can't make allegations about people and not have any backup for them at all.
Well, let me tell you, Ron.
She has been very, very open about this
Ron,
whole process.
Maybe it isn't her. I'm sure that it was in
Whoever it
the
is,
former office, and I
whoever
do
it
not
is,
think that
absolutely.
I do not personally think that it was Dalton McGuinty that did this. I think that it was people under him that thought that they were benefiting the party by doing this.
No, but as
whoever
leader,
it was,
as leader, the buck stops.
The buck
with you.
stops
Absolutely.
with you. It's true,
Yeah.
but I
Absolutely.
don't think that we're going to see Dalton
And I do
McGuinty
think-
sent off in handcuffs. But somebody will be.
And I think that if anyone is going to be muzzled out of this, I do think Hudak's going to be muzzled by his own caucus, because I think they've had it. The polls have shown that, Tara, that they're falling behind. And I agree with you that a single poll doesn't matter. What matters most is a trend over
Election
time.
day.
And I don't
But
think
I hope that,
anyone wants
Okay.
an election
Hudak better
right at the moment.
heed-
Yeah,
All
well,
right.
even
And that's
that
the
should-
interesting
that's
question
yeah.
is, will there be an election as a result of this? And
Larry,
because
we are always for an election
I know
because we
that.
need an elected premier.
well,
She is elected.
Well, okay, that's a different topic. But let's go on to another topic right now. One that actually, and we'll start with you, Ron, has implications Canada-wide, and that's the recent election that occurred in Quebec when the PQ pulled the plug and called for an election. They were headed to a majority government based on some divisive issues that we've talked about on this program. And of course, come election day, they are facing the most devastating loss that the PQ has ever had. The Liberals have been returned to power after only 18 months out of power. They were plagued by some scandals of their own, but they're back in power now with a brand new leader who believes in Canada. This Mr. Couillard, I'm very impressed with him, strongly suggests that Canada is the country to be. Young people overwhelmingly voted in favor of the Liberals and away from separation. So what are the reverberations for the parties? Does this benefit the Tories, the NDP, or the Liberals? What do you think?
It can only benefit the Liberals to a certain extent. The people, I love Quebec politics. It's just, it intrigues me. She misread the people of Quebec hugely. She did not know what they were saying. They don't want to separate. There are a fraction of separatists, obviously, but I mean, the majority of Quebecois are sovereignists. And she didn't touch on the economy. The people of Quebec are concerned about their economy. They're concerned about their future. Every time that a separatist talks about a referendum, separation, people leave. The economy goes into the dumps. They are the highest tax province in Canada, and people are concerned about that.
You know, it's funny because
all right, let's give Tara. Go ahead.
You know, we argue back and forth about federal politics, about provincial politics, but at least we're all on the same page. We all want a united Canada.
Absolutely.
We don't want Ontario to leave. Can you imagine living in a province as someone that believes in Canada, as perhaps an Anglophone living in Quebec, and to have this type of government? So thank goodness that it was defeated and handily defeated. And I think that this brought the party back 20 years. So I think it's going to be a long time before they can crawl back up. Now, I think when we're talking about, though, who it's going to affect the most, definitely it's going to affect the NDP the most, because going into the next federal election, you have so many NDP MPs, and I think that these are, it's good for the picking for the Liberals. So it is going to help you there, and I think it'll help us as Conservatives in that there'll be more infighting between these two.
I take a different viewpoint, Tara. I think that Quebecers voted once again to have a united sovereign country, and they did that a few months back when they voted in by huge numbers, 53 NDP MPs.
But a number of those people are separatists themselves.
I think that what's important to note here is that the Quebec Liberals have very many policies that are exact same as the NDP. In fact, our leader, Thomas Mulcair, has extremely strong ties to the Liberal Party of Quebec because he formerly was a cabinet minister, the Minister of the Environment. He voted for the Liberals, and he was in this past provincial election. And even if you look at their stance, the Quebec Liberals are against the Senate. They also have the exact same policy of a 50% plus one in terms of a referendum vote. That's the exact same policy as the NDP. So I think that this is good news for the NDP. I think that I think it's a lot of the same people.
I disagree with you. I think that a number of your MPs are separatists at heart. They belong to those parties beforehand.
That's just your fear-mongering,
No, it is
Tara.
not. You have a lot of young, idealistic MPs, and unfortunately, they tend to go towards separatism.
In 2015, we're going to find out how many of those federal seats that the NDP will still hold on to. You got to remember, Quebec politics is so totally different than the rest of Canada.
All right.
But I think what's
we're going to move
important
along
here
because we got
is,
two more.
We
have two more topics to cover before we get to my rant. In this one, Tara, we'll start with you because even though it's Justin Trudeau who's making the news here, you know that this Fair Elections Act that your government is pushing through the House of Commons, some people, including the Globe and Mail, that has dedicated a lot of time, the Hamilton Spectator editorially, and most of the other newspapers, including columnists, have said that the Fair Elections Act is anything but a fair act. Criticized heavily. Trudeau has said that he will repeal it in its entirety if he gets elected Prime Minister. Why are you guys hanging on to this flawed piece of legislation?
I just don't understand who is against having ID to go vote. And that is one of the cornerstones of this Fair Elections Act, making sure that someone that goes into a voting booth has a proper piece of identification to go and vote. What is the problem with that? And I ask you.
Well, no,
I don't get it.
But in fairness, it's a
more.
good
No,
question.
I don't get it.
Good question, but of course the Act has much more than simply having proper identification. It has some flawed parts of it. What's your party's position on it?
Well, we actually, there's parts of this act that the NDP absolutely agrees on. Certainly, there's measures in there to prevent more Pierre Poutine robocalls. So those measures should absolutely go through. I think, though, back to your earlier question about Justin Trudeau, this is grandstanding. He's been missing in action. He has not brought up any changes to the Fair Elections Act. For him to just say that he's willing to revert it after the election, why is he not doing the work now? And why isn't he asking any questions or holding the government's feet to the fire? The only one who's been doing the work here has been Thomas Mulcair and the NDP.
Would the NDP, if Thomas Mulcair became Prime Minister, repeal this act?
I can't speak, but I'm pretty sure that that's where we would go.
So that's where Trudeau is.
Well, no, it sounds like you
repeal it
agree with
also.
parts of it. Perhaps it can, when we're going through the whole motions,
Then
we
pick out those
and
parts that
but
benefit. This is
but it's a good bill.
It's an undemocratic bill.
Well, there's parts of
reason?
it.
Totally
There's parts of it that are
undemocratic.
extremely
Well, hang on, let's give
undemocratic.
Ron a
You
chance.
call it a Fair Elections Act. I understand the ID. There are problems with that also, where people do not have that piece of paper that would show, and they have every right to vote. If their name is on the voters list, they should be able to vote.
So is that your only issue with it?
No, there
Because
are
that
many
seems
other
to be
issues,
The only
but-
thing that people bring up, it's like nobody's read the actual act,
Well,
so they go, "Oh, there are problems," but we
yeah.
can't tell you what the problems are.
If you
Well, it's
read
undemocratic.
the 3 editorials that the Globe and Mail has done, you'll see the flaws. Sheila Fraser has called it an attack on democracy.
Well, Sheila Fraser has never really.
Sheila Fraser, well,
We've had our
in fact,
differences.
Larry,
We've had our
too,
differences.
I mean, the Ontario School Board Association has expressed huge concerns as public school board trustees. We're all about ensuring that the public has direct contact.
Your party leader has said that the government is trying to rig the elections before they happen with this act.
To their benefit.
And that's the concern that's been expressed. But listen, let's move on. One quick comment from each of you. It's got to do with the CBC. We'll start with you, Alex. $137 million they're going to lose in funding. They're going to have to cut programs. A lot of that is due to the fact that they lost the NHL and their revenues have fallen. What's the impact of that to the CBC, to the country, if they have to cut over 600 positions?
Well, the Conservatives are trying to get rid of the CBC, and they're just slowly, taking it away brick by brick, individual by individual. Certainly a lot of these cuts were at high level. I'm not really sure how they're going to be able to meet their mandate going forward. It's going to be very difficult for them. I think that a lot of questions have come forward, and I know certainly Conservatives have said, what is the value? We have private sector providing television. Not a lot of people watch CBC. You have to look back to when the CBC was first created in 1930. It was because there was only American content. And 84 years
Alex,
later,
now we
there's
have
majority
many Canadian
is
channels,
American content.
and they get their money from advertising. They get their money from sports.
I do want to finish my point, which is
Quickly though.
My point is that we fund all kinds of different institutions, whether it's museums, parks, libraries, and the same thing should be for the CBC. Not everyone uses a library. Not everyone uses a
how
museum.
much is it
But they're
costing
an
us?
important part of the
to
Canadian
bring
economy.
down their
you've taken up most of the time.
revenue by
Quickly, Tara.
10% over 5 years does not seem astronomical to me. That money should have been made up in ad revenue or in other ways through the private sector.
But did you guys have an agenda against the NBC, the CBC?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
not.
yes.
We're talking about you have to look at the value of this institution. Is it really something that's integral to the Canadian culture?
You go down that slippery slope, then
it is
what's
not
the
a
point of
slippery
parks?
slope.
What's the point of museums?
That has nothing. That's apples
That's
to
the
oranges,
slope you
Alex.
go down.
That's
All right,
that's
let's
nothing
give
to do
Ron,
with anything.
let's give Ron the last
First
word
of
on
all,
this.
I think the NBC, the CBC has an important
That's what
role
it's turning into.
To play in Canadian telecommunications. There are people in the far north that don't get any telecommunications, but CBC is there for them. CBC needs to reinvent itself. It needs to act more like the other mainstream.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Something that
It
people
does
want to watch.
to
If
survive. live.
don't want to
It
watch
does
it. What's the
CBC
point of
goes-
making it almost
I enjoy
billion
watching
dollars?
the
CBC goes
CBC.
where the private
Okay,
sector
all right,
doesn't.
okay. No, we're going to stop this because you're all talking all
I
over
enjoy
each other.
it. Let
You
me
know
finish.
what?
I enjoy the
Maybe
CBC
they
thing.
need to hire some folks
No.
who will do television
Exactly.
for nothing.
But yes,
And-
like us.
Wow.
But you
There
know,
we go.
Larry, I think the thing is that the CBC goes where the private sector doesn't, and that's why we need to
I
keep
agree.
it publicly
But do they
funded.
need $900 million
That's
to
the
do it?
traditional role of the CBC.
And that's my question.
Listen, I'm going to stop you there
TV's
because
expensive.
we've run out of time, except for a brief segment, one comment from each of you, with something that the City Council has been dealing with for the last number of years, and actually at the council meeting last night approved a citizens' review of this issue, and it has to do with a lobbyist registry. And for those of you who may not know, it's essentially a way of making sure that governments are held to transparent accountability. So if you're trying to see, if you're a business person and you're trying to see a councillor about an issue in his or her ward and you want to influence their decision, you now have to sign, you may have to sign sometime in the future when they pass this law, a registry that simply says you're doing that. If you are a social services person that wants to make sure that the buses and transportation rates are kept at a minimum or rolled back, and you want to see council to influence their decision, you're going to have to do that as well. So this is good. I think it's long overdue. Other cities have it. I think our city should have it as well. And at all levels of government, including school boards, maybe that should be included. Ron, what do you think? Overdue?
Well, it is overdue to a certain point. But I mean, if I wanted to get something through to a counselor and I could take him out for a coffee and talk to him and no one's to know about it. The idea of registering on big ticket items, I believe that they should be doing that. Items that are going to affect the whole community at large. But I mean, you can't have this people signing up and for every little issue, even something in the neighborhood that's going to concern you. It's got to affect the whole city.
The concern by some, Tara, councillors that they've expressed is that somehow it's going to paralyze business. If councillors have to worry about whether people have registered as lobbyists or whether they're seen at the shopping mall while they're doing their groceries and somebody talks to them, they have to worry about that.
Larry, we're not some tiny ma and pa hamlet of a town. We are a giant city of over 500,000 people, and this is necessary. We've seen just in the past few years, I think 3 councillors or 4 councillors got together with someone for lunch, and that was investigated. Well, what's going on there? Somebody offered the use of their box at a sporting event. That was looked at. We need to have things, we have to have all our ducks lined up in a row. And if there are people that want to talk to councillors to influence them for the decisions, there should be some sort of registry. Other cities do it. There's no reason why Hamilton can't do it.
And in fact, Alex, other cities, I know councillors are worried about whether people have registered. The issue is, and the model in other cities is this, that it's not up to a councillor to worry about that. It's up to the lobbyist to make sure that he or she is registered. The councillor doesn't even have to ask. The councillor doesn't have to assume anything other than having implemented the plan. All they have to do is worry about who it is that's coming to see them, as they normally do, and react appropriately. Take information, agree with them, disagree with them, whatever the normal course of events. So it shouldn't be a worry to councillors, because in other models, it's not their concern. It's the lobbyist concern. What do you think?
I think that the registry is a very good idea. I think that if we're looking to other cities to see, how they've implemented it successfully, of course, you don't want the public feeling concerned, exactly as the example was running into a councillor in the grocery store or something of that nature. But I think that it may also show another trend in terms of who has access to City Hall. I don't think that there are a whole bunch of social workers lined up to go, take our councillors out for lunch, but certainly the services that they provide are equally as important as the new builds and developments. So perhaps out of this whole process, we might end up getting more equal access to our councillors, because people might start asking, why haven't you spoken to these other groups as well?
Okay, and that's what concerns councillors, is that there are agendas other than transparency. The only agenda should be transparency. People should be able to see who it is that's having contact with City Hall. But the moment you want to tally up who a councillor is seeing, that's why they're skittish about it. Ron,
So-
you've been a councillor. What do you think?
So, I mean, people came to me when, on council with different issues. They wanted to advance a new development or advance something in the downtown core. These are all things that will affect everyone. And I didn't think it was such a huge problem before. If it's such a big problem now, then sign up. You want to talk to a councillor about
Ron,
some big issue, then sign up sign at the registry and let them know. But if I meet you downtown and we are in
Just
Jackson
like Alex
Square,
said, you bump into someone. I get it.
Oh God,
It's
I
not
can't
the
talk
same
to you.
thing.
I can't
It's
talk
not
to
the
you
same thing,
because,
Ron.
I
Ron,
don't
things
know
were even different 20 years ago. We're a much larger city, a much more vibrant city. So much is happening.
Okay,
so
so
many
now-
people
so now
are
all
wanting the attention
councillors-
of councillors.
all
And so it is important, though, that
all
we
councillors'
know.
emails
You
should be
also- I also
available
have to-
to every single person
I also
in
have
the
to
city.
get in there just because I don't think that that's necessarily about an agenda in terms of looking at who has access to decision makers, who has.
But Alex, if
have
a counselor
access.
now
Anyone.
has to keep their own tally book to say, well, are people going to say that
I
I'm
don't
not
think it's
socially
necessarily
conscious
that,
because I
and it
haven't
doesn't
seen
necessarily
25
have
people
to
from that
be
group?
critical in that way. But I think that what it can do is that for groups that are, say, talking about, whether it's subsidized childcare, a whole variety of other services that, maybe encouraging their own people to get out and speak with the
All right.
councillors.
Very good. We're going to have to stop there because we're out of time. Thank you, panel. And thank you for watching The Opinionators. A week from today. Are we on a week from today?
No.
2 weeks.
2 weeks from today. We're going to skip next week because there's some special events going. I think some sporting events. So you won't see us next week. But imagine the Allen Cup is on next week. Imagine all of the stuff we're going to have to talk about 2 weeks from now when you haven't heard us in 2 weeks. See you then.
And I'll be gone. So
Yeah,
have a good day.
the whole idea is
Coming into
Mike Neighbors.
Oh, good. And all councils going to have their computers
I just-
available.
No, but it's not just
And I don't
like they do
necessarily
now.
all the
think it
councillors
has
have
to
to
be
do.
talented.
All the councillors have to do is pass the bylaw. It's up to the lobbyists to register.
But can we not say the exact same thing, that it's up to the lobbyists to get out and to lobby council, right? So it's not necessarily criticizing a councillor for...